Welcome to another episode of the Sport of Bowling Show. On this week's show, we feature USBC Executive Director Chad Murphy, Metro Detroit USBC Association Manager and former USBC Board member Mark Martin, InsideBowling.com founder Mike Flanagan. And now, it's time for the Sport of Bowling Show.
Happy Friday. Welcome to the Sport of Bowling Show. Another great show on tap for you today. We've got Mark Martin, who is the Association Manager at Metro Detroit, the largest USBC association in the country. Mark's going to provide a lot of insight into being an association manager, but also his history. He's a bowler, volunteer leader, USBC board member. Mark's got a lot of experience in the sport over the last 25 years, but even his whole life too. So it's going to be a fun interview. I hope everybody enjoyed the special edition Sport of Bowling Show from this week with President-elect Melissa McDaniel and Jason Overstreet. Lots of really good tidbits in there, learning a little bit more about Melissa's background and how she came to volunteer leadership to lead our great organization over the next couple years. Should be a lot of fun. Having Melissa be a leader here at USBC for us. And then also, I hope everybody saw the bowling ball draft with Inside Bowling this week, the 3-hour bowling ball draft with Inside Bowling this week, which was a lot of fun to be a part of. I want to bring in Mike Flanagan from Inside Bowling, who's going to join us this week again. Mike, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to be here, man.
Really enjoyed the draft the other night. I don't know if it was the stories, the balls. I don't know. Somebody asked me what I thought about it all, and I said, well, I watched 90% of it, so it was a lot of fun to listen to what was going on. But did you have any, takeaways a couple days later? What'd you think?
Well, it was a ridiculous idea, first of all, but for whatever reason, it spoke to a lot of people, and I just enjoyed the group. Kind of staying out of everybody's way and respecting each other's space, because there were a lot of opinionated people in there and a lot of heavy hitters, but we got through it really well, and I feel like everybody drafted really good teams. I think the curveball there was your pick in the first round with the Bowler's Ed 4-pound green ball. I don't think anybody else was thinking that, but that was a great pick. And
I took a little grief. I got a text almost immediately and then a call the next day about that one. Somebody put a little politically correct pick, while at the same time I really believe that's one of the most important balls in bowling ball history. So it was kind of funny, but there were so many good things about that draft. Mike Albee I talked to on the phone this week, and he told me he watched the whole thing from start to finish. He said he couldn't turn it off. So I thought that was kind of funny and interesting. But I think anytime you get a group like that, and I appreciated you doing it. I feel like there needs to be a conversation about, which team won. I know Tom Clark took the lead and decided that he won at the end, but nobody else really got an opportunity to weigh in on that. So I would be interested to hear what a few of the others had to say about that.
Yeah, I focused on the celebration of manufacturing and all the great products and not who won or lost. I felt like everybody was winners, and I know I sound like a politician right now. But just to remind everybody, and I've got the draft picks up here, you took the Bowler's Ed green ball in the first round. That's a 4-pounder, and it does bounce. You did let everybody know that. Then you took the Beast solid, because you have a love affair for the Beast line. Purple Rhino Pro, Nitro R, Inferno V2, EPX, and the Pink Ultimate Weapon was your 8 picks there. So
I thought I could go compete with those balls. Even, I have a trophy on my wall right here that my son and I won the Bowler's Ed company picnic with. So even that one, I feel like I could compete with, because I've got a trophy to prove it. But at the same time, anyway, a lot of fun. I hope everybody will check it out. The best thing about, or one of the great things about these interviews and things that are going on all over the internet, is that you can go back and watch them whenever you want. And so that one's 3 hours long. You don't have to take it all in one setting either. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you being part of it, and everybody that tuned in and watched. And it is archived on YouTube and Facebook on both the USBC page and Inside Bowling.
Are you, I hate to put you on the spot, but there was a piece at the end there where you talked about live streaming 24 games of Utah with Mike Flanagan. I hate to do the 24 hours of Le Mans, but is that real? Are you doing it? What's going on there?
24 games is what it was going to be. We've just seen a lot of people, watching people bowl online. It reaches a lot of people, and that's what we're in the business of doing, is of impressions, total impressions on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. And Matt Farber doesn't think I can bowl at all. Many people don't. So I said, maybe I'll just go bowl 24 games straight, and we can ask people a bunch of questions about, how many 200 games am I going to have and things like that. We think we just have a bunch of people watch, and we'd have like a bunch of special guests on to basically heckle me and give me a hard time while I got AirPods in, and just for ridiculousness again. But that's what we do at Inside Bowling.
I'm sure you'll have Coach Shady be the one to do it, not to invite myself into that, but I would love to be the one to do the picture in the picture and break down the physical. I used to coach at one time, so I mean, I could have a opinion about your back of the approach to the foul line. I'll stay away from the foul line to the pins, but maybe we could do that as a pre-show. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, we'd have a bunch of guests on, because Farber would actually host it and just bring guests on. We do it through this exact same platform that we have right here, and I'd be hooked up to the Wi-Fi, and I'd have AirPods in, and I could hear what you guys are talking about while I'm bowling. So,
well, good luck with whatever comes next from that. The eye in the disc assessment that I love so much about you. I can't wait to follow whatever's next from Inside Bowling. It'll be fun.
Thanks, man.
Was there anything else in the marketplace that stood out this week? The shows that some of the folks did, anything that you saw?
I've been pretty impressed with what's been going on under your roof there. That show with J.O. and Melissa was great. And I think that the media team there has been doing a good job with all the stuff over on Bowl TV. I've been able to watch those. I like the Gauntlet on Fridays with Curtis Von Kruger, and the work that the rest of the media team are doing with Emil and Aaron, as well as Daniel Farish and Matt Cannizzaro. You should definitely go check out what they're doing on Bowl TV for sure.
Yeah, Missy Parkins' interview I enjoyed listening to this week. That one was fun, so I appreciate you saying that. Beef and Barnesy did one with Mika. It never gets, kind of old seeing Mika and Chris go at it a little bit, but if you're interested in that, you should check that out too. Well, awesome. Well, let's get Mark in here. Mark Martin is the association manager at Metro Detroit. Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chad.
We've got so much to cover, but just start by saying hi. How are things in Detroit? I know how you had a little bout with COVID. So if you want to, kind of give everybody a preview of that, but how are you? How are things?
Things are good. Back late March, early April, I come home from work one night and I say to my wife, I said, man, I've got the chills. I jumped in bed, I put a couple blankets on, and it just didn't go away. And at that time, with all the COVID, that wasn't one of the symptoms. And so that lasted for several days, and I was lethargic. I finally went for a swab test. The swab test came back negative. My doctor tells me, oh, Mark, that test got 25% negative, false negatives in it. And I said, well, okay. And so I went on. And then finally last week, I said, you know what? I got to answer this question. I mean, I feel great now. There was that 10-day period where I was in bed literally 16 to 18 hours a day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My wife, Catherine, I mean, she took care of me, took a few days off work, made sure I had plenty of fluids. I lost 15 pounds in that period of time, which was a good thing, but not in the way it happened. So last week, I finally went for the antibody test, and that turned out positive. So I did, in fact, have COVID-19 back at that time. President of our association, George Brzezinski, also had COVID-19. Him and I were together one night here in the office doing city tournament checks. We were here for about 6-7 hours, stuffing envelopes and stuff. So if one of us had it before, we kind of maybe gave it to each other. Who knows? But we're both doing well now, and thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And obviously, when you hear that, there's some fear and scary to it. So, glad you got through it safely, and good to have you.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind starting, I think a lot of the folks that are on the show completely understand what an association manager is, but I'm not sure a big portion of folks, really truly understand it. I always try to explain to folks, USBC is one association, local, state, and national. And then I'm essentially the association manager here at national, and you do all the same things there locally that we do here in terms of managing the business. But help someone that might not understand, these 1,600 associations across the country, that they have a staff leader too, and you're it. And what do you do?
Okay, well, in my case, I've got a full-time staff of 4, and that do a lot of the processing, those kind of things. But in essence, I report to the board of directors. The board has their meetings, 4, 5, 6 times a year. They develop strategies, they develop events, and then they kind of say to me, okay, Mark, take care of it. So I go out and do that. But then beyond that, I have great people that I work with on the board. I have great staff members. I have great family behind me. I mean, I started in this sport as a kid, like many of us did, when my mother and dad drugged me to the bowling center. My mother was a coach when I was a kid. I was a league secretary at 14 in my youth league. So once I got the opportunity to be a volunteer in 1980, I think it was 85, with the BA here locally, then I started learning more about the administration of the sport. I'd been a league secretary as an adult moving up to that time, but now you get here and you get in this role. I've been in this role almost 25 years, either with the BA, the WBA locally, and now with the Metro Detroit USBC, and it's really all the same. We are there to support the national organization, implement the programs, work with our local proprietors, of which we have over 60 bowling centers in our market. We have nearly 40,000 members, and it's our job, basically, we're the boots on the ground. So we're creating events for people to bowl in and participate in. And in our case, we have events anywhere from our youth all the way up to our seniors, from handicap events to scratch events. I mean, it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, I try to use this example sometimes. Local associations come in a lot of shapes and sizes. And when I first came in, I was doing a lot of research into youth sports. And I was at a local YMCA in town here. And the lady told me that they manage all youth sports for the YMCA in Fort Worth. It's 17,000 kids. And I was asking her some questions, and then I dragged that back to a local association where you have 40,000 members. I mean, that's significant. I mean, you think about how many people that is and how many different tournaments you run. And, when you think about kids all the way up to seniors, it's a lot. So having a staff of 4, and then how many volunteers would you say work with your association over a year's time?
I'd say over the course of a year, obviously we have 17 on our board, and then we have another probably 25 to 30 regular type volunteers that help out at events. We just hosted the state tournament, the Open Championships in Michigan in our market. Obviously, we got cut short because of COVID. But I had people that were doing brackets for us, that were selling 50-50 and all sorts of things like that. So, you put the call out, that's what we do. We put the call out, we recruit people, we bring them in, and then some of those people then graduate to become board members even.
Yeah, I always think it's funny. Mike, I'll let you get in here. People hear me talk about the volunteers all the time and how we just couldn't operate the sport without them. And there's, roughly 27,000 of them across the country. And everybody thinks I'm just making that up, like it's just something fun to say. We couldn't operate without the volunteers. I mean, it's just that simple. And so having, whether it's a local association manager that volunteers at the national level and there's a progression to that, or having somebody locally that works in a youth tournament that ends up sitting on a committee that sits on a board, there's a progression to all of it. And we'll get into yours and how we get to the board, but the volunteers really are the lifeblood. I mean, we just couldn't do it without them. Mike, what do you got for Mark?
Yeah, Mark, I think one of the biggest things that I just heard here with you guys talking is 40,000 members in the Detroit area, and bowling was thriving years ago, as we know, and some of the hotbeds, different cities were more popular than others, and we've seen some of the more popular cities see a decrease in the amount of members that they've had, but Detroit still seems to be really booming and thriving. Why do you think the Detroit area still has so many members bowling? What's been the success since you've seen it for 25 years?
Well, I mean, we've gone through the decline also, Mike. Our high point, believe it or not, in the late 70s, early 80s, like everybody else, was roughly 270,000 members between men, women, and youth. And so to have 40,000, it's a little disappointing, but we also understand that there's a lot more things for people to get involved in these days than there were, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I believe that we have a strong proprietor base here in Detroit that support traditional league bowling and events. Obviously, we're the volunteers and we go out there and interface with the members as much as we can. But really, the ones that touch the members on a daily basis are the proprietors and their team. And so that's why we always have tried to have and do have a very good relationship with our proprietors, because really, in a lot of respects, they're our first line of defense. So when a league has a problem, they go to the counter, then they get us involved. Is kind of the way it goes. So I think the biggest thing is our proprietors.
Yeah, and with those proprietors, you have some great ones there. I've spent a lot of time in Detroit at Thunder Bowl. Obviously, Thunder Bowl is kind of the strobe light for the Detroit area with everything that goes on there with the World Series of Bowling over the year, Junior Gold, a couple, recently. So I wanted to ask you, with all the bowlers you've seen over 25 years, who are some of your favorite bowlers that have come out of Detroit?
Well, obviously, we've had a lot of great bowlers come out of Detroit in the last 100 years, really. Yeah, you say that, I think back to, I've been a bowler since I was 10 years old and, bowled in a number of leagues, bowled in a little scratch competition earlier in my career. And I bowled in a Friday night league back in the early 80s. And there was this guy in our league that had the high average. And at that time, I had the second high average, Harry Sullins. The legend, just ask him, right? And so I met Harry before he ever went out on tour and started his Ironman streak. And I still speak to him a lot today. And, every time he's a good one for calling and rattling my chain on occasion. So, Harry, obviously, we had Bob Chamberlain. We've had, it's too many to count. We've had national champions. We've had Ronnie Sparks, still bowling very well in our market. We've had PBA champions. I don't think I could pick one or two out of that. I know that, Mike.
Yeah, you've just had a ton of great bowlers come out of the Detroit area for sure. One other question I wanted to have for you before I throw it back to Chad is on a yearly basis, everybody knows kind of what happens in every city, but what are some of the highlights throughout the year for you in regards to just the entire bowling season, whether if it's, when fall leagues start up, whether if it's your state tournaments that you talked about, whether you have a Masters tournament, just what are some of the highlights throughout the year that happen in Detroit?
Well, in our association, we have, as I indicated earlier, we have about 25 tournaments a year that are run by the association from youth to seniors. But then we have, on the high end, we have our Queens tournament. In the fall, we have our Super Senior Masters in the fall for those 60 and older. We have our Senior Masters in the winter for those that are 50 and older. We have our Masters in the winter, which are 50 and older. We have our Junior Masters in the spring, which this year got canceled because of COVID. So we have a lot of high-level competition. Then beyond that, in 2011, working with one of our proprietors, Pat Klein, we put together a women's series because we didn't have a lot of good we didn't have any scratch women's competition. We had our queens every year, but that was about it. So we started our women's series in 2011, and we're going into our 10th year this year. Been pretty successful. Last year, a year before last, we added a men's series. Now, I avoided doing that for a number of years because we had competition for the men in our market, and it kind of dwindled in some regard. So we added a men's series to our women's series. So we do those at the same time in the same bowling center. They're separate competitions with the very same format, and it's pretty short format. It's a 4-game qualifier. Then we cut to the top quarter of the field. We do single game, single elimination match play until we get a champion. And then since we do have the men and the women, what we do at the end of the day, we have the women's champion bowl against the men's champion for $100 cold cash and bragging rights. And it's really nice to have some of the competitors stick around and cheer on their competitor in that final competition. A little bit of smack talk going on, but all in good fun.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's good to hear that things are going so good for you guys still up in Detroit, and you got so much bowling going on.
Yeah, Mark, talk about, when we promoted the show yesterday, JT picked a video from your show that I think is a really cool, piece of business that you and your board decided to do a number of years ago. Would you mind tell everybody what it is? JT will show a little video, but also how the inner workings of it, became possible, because you run tournaments, you process memberships, but you market bowling in your local market too, and this is part of it.
Well, we do. And again, we couldn't do these kind of things without our proprietors. I mean, proprietors support the show financially by putting teams in or sponsoring parts of the show. We also have a nice sponsorship from the state association. So the show is in 2 segments. We have our competition and we have our magazine show. Magazine shows are roughly once a month. We do 9 of them through the year, starting in September. And we feature all of our events, the upcoming events, and also the past events and the results. And then we have competition shows. We have 16 adult teams and we have 8 youth teams, and they bowl a single game Baker single elimination match. So for the youth, we do that in the fall. We have 8 teams. We do 7 shows to crown a champion. And on the adults, we have 16 teams. We have 15 shows to crown a champion, and there's no prize money involved. When we first started this, people would say, well, what do we win if we win this? And I said, you win bragging rights and a big old trophy you can take to your home center and display. Oh, and I said, the bottom line is this is about promoting bowling. This is about promoting our sport in our market, and the entire season, which is 38 weeks long, is about a $90,000 project. So like each one of the teams put up $1,000 to get into the event. On the adult side, $800 on the youth. The centers that host the competition, they kick money in. The association kicks money in. Some of our sponsors, we have Storm and Motive, Fed Brunswick in the past. Hopefully I can talk Brian into it again this year. Again, the Michigan State Association, the Proprietors Association on a state and local level have been part of our show and still continue to be part of our show. We couldn't do it with all that. So I always tell people, it's not about winning, it's about promoting our sport. And really, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think that I appreciate you saying that, because it is about promotion. I would encourage any association manager that watches this, or even a local board member in any given market, because it seems like that's a pretty daunting task. But I know you started, a little smaller than you are now, and getting the sponsorships and those types of things. But it's not like you set out to say, well, I just have a bunch of money, so I'm going to go spend it. You fundraise to do it, and you get a lot of folks involved. So anybody that's interested in doing something like this, give Mark a call directly, have a conversation about it. And I think the idea, might spawn into other areas. I just think it's tremendous. Jordan Asper, a friend of bowling, just said on the post there, Detroit's a very well-run association. I think that's a good way to describe it. Talk about a little bit of your board. and how the board oversees the staff and kind of an understanding. I want to get into the national piece, but I want to make sure, a member in Detroit that looks as you as the front man for everything that's going on, and good or bad, you're the guy, right? But really, there's a group of people that are making a lot of those decisions, there locally. So if you don't mind, just kind of explain your relationship with the board. I know you've been there a long time and you're retiring, so you get to do whatever you want. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
That's not quite the case.
But if you don't mind, just explain, how it works for anybody who might not know.
Well, obviously our board is 17, as I indicated earlier. We've had 4 presidents since 2006 when we merged. We merged in 2006 with 2 WBAs, the Youth Association and the BA in our market. I was the association manager of the BA and the WBA prior to merger. And, we've had 4 great presidents. We started out with Libby Fletcher. Libby Fletcher was our president for the first 4 years. Mike DeRosie was the president for the next 4 years. John Vorpagel was the president for the next 4 years. And then now our current president is George Brzezinski. So we've had good, solid leadership from our presidents and the board. Again, I report to the board. I communicate with them all the time. Obviously, I have some latitude because of the amount of time I've been here. They depend on me to make sure things happen. And so I take that role very seriously. I don't abuse it. I obviously have limitations, and I should have limitations because guess what? I'm just a guy in the chair. That's really what it is. I'm a bowler like everybody else. Obviously I answer all the questions on a daily basis. I'm in the office every day or available every day, either by phone or by email, because people depend on getting an answer. People depend on, as the governing body, and especially the local unit of the governing body, they depend on that governing body to help. That's the reason they're members. They're not members because of awards and things like that, even though, some are. But mostly it's about the governance of the sport and the fact that they've got a place to go if things aren't going right in their organized competition.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Who do you call when you got a problem? Who do you got to call when you have something you want to celebrate? Who do you call when you have an idea that might be great for the marketplace as well? And I know you're in the spot for that, but it moves in and out of the board too, which I think is unique. Mike, you got anything else on the local piece before we, move into the national relationship too?
Well, when you guys start talking about who you're going to call, I just think Ghostbusters. And now I think I'm going to think Mark Martin every time I need to call somebody. And Mark, I got your number now, so I'm going to call you every time I got a question about any sort of rules or anything. Just kidding, but Mark,
hey, that's fine. That's fine with me, Mike.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on it. I'm going to
Spritko's the expert, but guess what? I learned, Mike and I worked together all these years, and that's who I go to if I'm not quite sure about something.
Yeah, it's awesome to have those resources. So I got to ask, what's your favorite thing about being the association guy there in Detroit?
I think that my favorite thing is the fact that I can make a difference. I have the opportunity. I work with a great bunch of people. Again, whether it be my staff or the board or our volunteers. I'm not going to say it's easy every day because it's not. But, I love the opportunity of helping people and promoting our sport, making sure our sport moves forward. Because, if we don't do it, it doesn't happen on its own.
Boy, isn't that the truth. I said I was going to do this in the first half hour and the second. Mark, I know you're going to close with it, but Detroit Metro's actively looking for a replacement for when Mark retires. So JT, if you don't mind, pop up the information on the screen, and Mark, you can talk to it. I just want to do it now and towards the end because we'll have people coming in and out of the podcast. But go ahead and give it a little pump there, Mark, with what you're looking for.
Okay, so let me just paint a little picture. Obviously, I've been doing this 25 years. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I served my 9 years on the national board, termed out there. I served 20 years on the state board. And you know what? I love bowling. I love what I do. But you know what? I'm at the point in my life where I'd like a little more time for myself. You know, I've got I got a son, I got 3 granddaughters, I've got 3-step kids, 3-step grandkids, 3 or 4. I got 3 now, a 4th one on the way. I've got 3 great grandkids. You know, I really want time to do that and be able to see that. I've missed so much over the years. And again, you can't do this kind of thing without family. You know, whether it be, I can't tell you the number of events that I've missed, family events, because I was out running an event. So now I'm looking to move on to the next step. I talked to the board back in 2016. So it's been about 4.5 years since I told them, hey, this is my 5-year plan. Well, it turned out to be, you know, the date is July 31st, 2021. It's only 406 days away. I have a little countdown calendar, you know, in my bedroom that I look at every morning, but I still love doing what I do. I still love being here. I'm not going away. The board and I have come to an agreement that once my replacement gets in place, I'm going to be here for at least 3 years beyond that to serve as the assistant to the person. And people will say, well, is that going to be tough, just kind of letting go? And you know what? If I do my job right and train this person right, it won't be tough at all. I mean, but really what we're doing, we're looking now for somebody that would have association manager experience. So any of you out there that are association managers, former association managers, volunteers, if you're interested in more information, please drop me an email. Jason's got the email address, my email address on the screen there. Feel free to call me. I'll be happy to talk to you. We do have a job description that I can forward to you if you are interested. It is a full-time position. Again, we have a staff to do a lot of the day-to-day work. But again, it is a big responsibility. And guess what? It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. And so if you really want to, if bowling has been your life and administration of bowling has been your life, and you've only been able to do it in a part-time fashion, and you would like to expand that horizon, here's your opportunity.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think it's something, and the way you guys are doing it is just, to me, exceptional in that, you know, someone's going to train with you for a few years or a period of time, and then they're going to do it for 20 years because they learned from one of the best. So I just think that a lot of times people land into roles and they're not trained to do them, and they come and go, where I just think what you guys are doing is tremendous. But also that email address up there for anybody that might just be interested in learning more about association business or how to better run your association, Mark's always available. Mark, I want to move kind of towards, and you hit on it there, right? 20 years at the state, in addition to employees there, 40,000 bowlers. And for some reason, you also thought, hey, I got time to volunteer at the national level. Kind of give everybody an understanding. Not everybody knows that that's available to everybody, but why'd you do it? Why was it important just in the beginning in deciding to do it?
Well, it really started, my national experience really started out with the American Bowling Congress. I was a member of the final ABC board when USBC was created back in 2004 or 5. I'd served, I think, at that point 2 or 3 years on the ABC board. At the time, Duncan McPherson, some of the other leaders of ABC were really after me to run for one of the positions on either the transition committee or the board, and really to serve on the new USBC board. And I told him at the time, I said, you know, I said, we've got a big job in Detroit and I'm hoping, and again, I wasn't guaranteed anything, let's be honest about it, but we've got a big job in Detroit to put our merger together with our entities here in this market. And I want to be part of that. And if I'm, you know, I can't split my loyalties at this point. If this is to be a successful merger in Detroit, I can't go off to the national at that point. So I continued to go to convention every year. Libby Fletcher, as many of the people at home know, served on the USBC board from 2009 on. Libby is commonly referred to as my bowling wife. And in 2009, my real wife attended the convention with me, and Libby had got elected she served a partial term and then got elected for the first time in 2009. And on the way home from the convention that year, I said to my wife, I said, that's something I would really like to do. I think I'm in a position to do this now, time-wise, because it does take time. And she said, well, how much will you be traveling? And I said, just a meeting once in a while. No, I honestly told her what to expect. And she said, if that's your passion and that's what you want to do, I support you 100%. I then ran for the board in 2010. I got elected in 2010 and then reelected in 13 and 16. So anybody can do it. We need, the board needs, as you well know, Chad, and others on the national board or have served on the national board, it can't be all bowlers. It's got to be broad-based. It is broad-based, but there are 9 delegate directors, and that comes from the convention each year. As many of you know, they go to convention. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it this year, but get out there. Put yourself out there. Even if you don't think you can do it, put your name out there. Go through the process. You'll learn. I mean, some of the board members out there today, my last few years on the national board, and I termed out on July 1st of 19, I kind of looked at myself as a senior statesman on the board. And so when we would be somewhere and I'd be the guy sitting at the bar rail, talking to Rhino Page or talking to Tony Colangelo or talking to others on the board, Jay Derriman. It's just listening to them, but also trying to answer any questions they may have, because really it's all about, to me, is passing on the knowledge, not retaining it. It's not my little fiefdom. You know what? We're all in this together, and it's my job to, just like I do my job here in Detroit, it's my job to help other people.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit. You kind of went there and you talked about it a little bit, but the one of the great things about the board, again, that I didn't know before I got here into the youth area, is how diverse it is in terms of where those board members come from. 2 proprietor seats, the youth committee seats, the 9 delegates that come from convention, which generally speaking are association managers or people in the association world, and then also the athletes. And so when you put all that in the room, there's an association manager out there. There's a local board member out there that probably doesn't think this is for them or doesn't know, or maybe they're intimidated by it. But in your 9 years, and I try to say this to people when I say, you shouldn't feel like you need to have all the experience to sit there in year 1, right? You come in, you learn a little bit. I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, because you went from someone who did have some experience, a lot of experience locally, state level, you roll into this spot. And then when you left, you were chairing the Legal and Legislative Committee, which is one of the most important committees that we do. It's not sexy. People don't necessarily understand it, but imagine a governance structure without one. And so now you're a senior leader, but explain to someone how they don't necessarily have to have all the experience right when they come in. They shouldn't say, hey, that's not for me, unknowing that it might be.
I didn't have the experience for legal and legislative when I joined the board in 2010. Obviously, I was involved locally. I was involved in our local bylaws. I've been going to conventions since 1988. So I'd gone through a lot of legislative processes, both in the ABC and then obviously in the USBC. But I got tabbed in year 1 to serve on legal and legislative, the finance committee, and equipment specs. It was just like amazing. And
the triangle of power.
Yeah. And guess what? To me, I wasn't even thinking that. I was thinking, okay, here's an opportunity for me to use my experiences and my background to try to help the organization, because really that's what it's all about. And over the years, obviously, I stayed on legal and legislative my entire career on the board, and then chaired it at the end, following up a great chairman, Tamara Adams. Tamara took me under her wing. Her and I had several, well, she had wine, but I had beer, discussions over wine and beer over the years that she was the chair. And then when she termed out, I think in 2015, she had kind of tabbed me to be the chair, and then we took it from there. So it's all about, especially with the term limits. Some of us in the volunteer think about ABC and WIBC and how you could never crack that glass. So I'm not even going to try. Well, USBC is different. You got a 9-year term limit. We have volunteers out there that are either association managers or otherwise involved. And here's an opportunity that, guess what? You may not get it the first time. You may not even get it the second time. But take your experience and go through the process. You'll surprise yourself.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to move over to Mike for a second. Mike, a lot of folks don't know that any member could run to sit on the board. And so when you think about that and you hear Mark talking about it, you're a guy that's been in bowling center leadership. You're a marketing and sales guy. You've worked for the manufacturer. There's there are a lot of competent, capable people who really don't know this is probably for them. But, when you hear all that, what's going through your head?
Yeah, I mean, if you love bowling and you've got any smarts about you at all, you should try to get involved in your local association. You either have that passion for bowling or you don't. And the people that do, I'm sure, Mark, you get a lot of calls throughout the year from bowlers that are very passionate about something that happened in a bowling center, good or bad, probably more bad than good, because that's just kind of human nature to pick up the phone and do so. But those are the prime candidates for potential future volunteers and people that can get in and get the knowledge. I think there's a lot of bowlers out there that just lack the knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes, because they just don't even want to think about the things, what did you call it? The triangle of power. Like, I don't even think people would even realize or think that it's a triangle of power. A lot of people would think, well, that's boring. I want to put my shoes on and go out and bowl. And then when I don't bowl well, try to figure out what rule screwed me so that I couldn't, do well on the lanes, right? So I'm going to call Mark, or I'm going to call Chad, or I'm going to call somebody, right? And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes at the local level, to the state level, to the national level, that I just think has been hidden under a rock for several years. And that's why when Chad told me that you were going to be on the show today, I was really looking forward to listening more than talking, even though I've been talking a little bit here on this one. But just knowing and hearing what goes on there, and for the amount of years that you've done it, I think I would challenge anybody that's listening to this show of any age, but especially the young people, to get involved in bowling, the ones that really have the passion for it. Because if there are changes that people want to see made, the only way you can get those changes to happen is to get involved and go in and start speaking your piece and seeing if the majority agrees, and then start speaking up and doing so. So I think it's just wonderful what happens at the association level and then at the national level. And to hear you not only having a full-time job there in Detroit, but then wanting to get involved in national and talking to your wife about it, I mean, it just proves to me you have a passion for bowling for sure.
Well, Mike, you talk about starting at the local level. You're absolutely right. We've seen people, and I served on the nominating committee for a couple of years too at the national level, and we've seen people go from being a bowler to wanting to be on the national board. And it's not that you can't do it, because again, as Chad said, every member is eligible to run. But you really, just like any other job, you have to take it like a job. You really got to have a little bit of background and a little bit of, because once you get into that boardroom at the national level, I will tell you, it's not like in your local league meeting. You've got all these diverse people from different backgrounds, all focused on one thing: making the organization the best it can be and governing the sport of bowling. And, sometimes you may think you've got the greatest idea in the world, and you may get into that room and now you look around the room and they go, who's this guy? What's he think he knows? And so, you really, it's more than just that. But again, I think you got to have a base, and you start at the local level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I always say, decisions are made by those who choose to show up, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. And Mike, you hit on it there. There are those who just want to bowl, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some of those folks would also make great volunteer leaders, but it doesn't shortchange the ones who choose to lead. And Mark, you've been doing it for a long time, and so it's just really impressive. Talk a little bit more about, and again, I'm not asking you to divulge any board secrets here, and would hate for the two of us to get in trouble when we do it. But I think a lot of folks think there's things that happen in these board meetings or what doesn't happen in it. In your tenure, the association has done a lot. I mean, when you really go back to when you started to the 9-year run, and help everybody understand how it happens. There's a business plan that's developed. There's conversation between the board and the staff. Then the board moves to its own committee structure where the committees are doing the work, and then they make a recommendation. Help everybody understand that it's rarely one person or two, and how much collective, and also that not everybody has to agree all the time.
Well, you're absolutely right, Chad. I mean, it starts with an idea. It could come from you. It could come from a member of the board. It could come from a committee. And that's how those things go. PWBA on the national level, as you talked about before, started with a task force. From the task force starting, you didn't know PWBA was going to come out of it. You would hope it would, but there was no guarantee that it would because it took a lot of work. But again, it all starts with an idea. The local level is the same way. I mean, it's not one person that walks into the room one day and says, hey, we need to spend X amount of dollars to do this. And everybody goes, yay. We may not have the structured business plans that we have at the national level, at the local level, but we definitely vet the ideas. I mean, you can't go out and spend, $20,000 on something, because guess what? At the end of the day, and when you have your annual meeting of your members locally, you got to answer for that. You got to be prepared to answer for that. And if you're not prepared to answer for that and haven't done your due diligence, then you're not doing your job right.
Yeah, that's very well said. Your time on the board, a lot's happened. You really think about it. From the youth BPA and USBC coming together, and USBC giving up some control and BPA giving up some control to decide to work together, PWBA, US Open return, Association Leadership Academy. I mean, I could go really deep. Then in the legislative piece, the merger was completed. Yep. There was a dues increase that was, fought for on the delegates' floor. I mean, you think about all of this stuff, and you contributed to all of those conversations, whether being at a committee, in the board, or right there in the delegation with you at the podium, brother. I mean, you think about that. What do you look back and say, man, I'm really proud of that? Or boy, I wish we'd have gotten that one done too. What do you think about when you look back on it?
I think when I look back, obviously the organization's evolving every day. I don't think I left anything on the table. I was out there all the time, as you well know, Chad, and you and I didn't always agree on things either. And I can't look back and say, God, I wish we would have done this. I don't know of anything.
Yeah. What would you really hang your hat on? I mean, what are the real positives that you'll remember and take away that you think are? I always say it's the stuff that's going to be a part of bowling for a long time that I'll watch grow and evolve. What were some of those things for you?
I think the number one thing was the passage of the legislation which mandated local and state mergers. I mean, that was so tough. It had been on the docket 3, 4 times. It had been talked about almost since the beginning. And it was tough on everybody. I'm not going to say that. It's the right thing. I think we all know that now. Yes, there's casualties. There's no doubt that there were local leaders that just walked away when mergers happened. We had it happen in Detroit, and I know others that went into the merger process because they were, quote, forced to. We lost a lot of good people there. But really, did we lose them? Or was it just their time and their time to move on?
Yeah, the merger is such a big piece. I'm glad you brought it up because, we moved around the country. We had a lot of conversations, but you never really knew. And now being completely merged, it's, 20 years from now, everybody's going to look back on that as a watershed moment for the organization. So
I agree.
Thanks for, driving that. And, when you guys did it in Detroit, even, being trailblazers in that, it's just fascinating. Not everybody, really understands or knows the story. Mike, you got anything there for Mark?
I think back to the ABC WIBC merger, and I may be really dating myself on that one, but that was another interesting time for sure, especially in the St. Louis market where I was. It was kind of fought with some resistance in our market because the WIBC was so strong, and why do we have to merge and things like that, and all that happened on your watch as well.
Yeah, I was on the national board at the time when that happened, the national ABC board at that time. I remember being in the room in, I believe it was Tulsa, Oklahoma at the WIBC convention. ABC had already passed it, the delegates had, and we were waiting for the WIBC delegates to pass it. And the elation when that happened was just, in fact, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it.
Yeah, it was a cool moment for sure. I wish I'd have been in that room that day. I got a kind of a final question here for you, Mark. You've seen a lot in bowling. I'm sure you've watched a professional bowling on television over the years. It sounds like you have, obviously. And you've got to see the youth. You've got to see it at every level. What is maybe a moment that's happened in bowling, not necessarily inside of Detroit, but just overall in bowling, maybe a professional accomplishment or something that just makes you just say, wow, that was a special moment?
I remember I worked at General Motors from 1972 to 1988. And in 1978, I was working a lot of overtime. I was working the afternoon shift, and I could never watch Saturday afternoon bowling on ABC. I could never do it. So in 1978, I bought my first VCR. I don't remember how much money I was making at the time, but I spent like $800 to buy a VCR just so I could watch the bowling show on Saturday. And the first one I remember is when Bob Chamberlain, because again, I look at locals, right? When Bob Chamberlain was on, and it was, it was so amazing. I mean, again, I've watched bowling since I was a kid. I get impressed by the talent, as all of us do, especially since I can't do that anymore. Chad will tell you, I mean, I bowled 41 national tournaments, and I am now officially in the classified division, which is an embarrassment to me. But and if anybody uses the S word on me, I'm going to come back at you. But I'm amazed at the talent today. But I guess in our industry, my predecessor in Detroit was Tom McKay. And if anybody knew Tom was the ABC president in 1992. He had my position as the association secretary in Detroit from 1965 till he retired in 1995 when I took over. Tom taught me, and we talk about the training for the new person, Chad, earlier in the show. And I kind of take it back that my training was, I walked in on January 1st or January 2nd, 1996, and the job was mine. I had Tom there coming in a couple days a week to try to, hey, do you need anything? What can I do? You've been a volunteer for 10 years. You were chairman of our finance committee. You know everything. And I walked in, I go, okay. And I was scared to death. And, but again, I had some good staff people that I worked with. At that time, I had a larger staff, obviously, because we had more members. But after Tom had come into the office for about 3 weeks, he walks in my office one day and he goes, I don't think I need to be here anymore. If you need me, call me. And Tom's still a good friend of mine. Tom just turned 90 here just over a week ago Wednesday, and still bowls. And so he's been retired now for 25 years. I hope I get 25 years retirement out of it.
Yeah.
But Tom was the chair. Again, he was ABC president in 92, but he was chair of the equipment specs committee for the joint ABC WIBC equipment specs committee when short oil started. And he was part of that decision process with the war with the proprietors over lane conditions, which totally changed our game, in my opinion.
I agree. I think the message in there that's really important, and hopefully everybody will take away, is that there's a succession to this as well. Tom passed it to you. You moved on. The wonderful piece of this is, having the local association manager of the largest association in the country sit on our board is really a blessing. And I don't know that just is always something that would happen, but you just explained that Tom was there too. So I just think it's tremendous. That piece with the professional, and Mark hit it again, JT, if you wouldn't mind putting his information back up on the screen. Metro Detroit is looking for a future association manager. Mark will be working with this person if you're interested in what I might describe as a labor of love in addition to a full-time job that Mark just kind of expressed. Shoot Mark an email. While they're looking at that, Mark, how many, you said 41 open championships.
Yes.
How many state events, conventions have you been to?
Well, I've been to the ABC USBC convention since 1988. So, this year would have been my 43rd consecutive. My USBC Open, ABC Open, I started in 1979. I say 43rd, 33rd, sorry about that with my conventions. But I started in 1979 in the ABC Championships in Tampa, Florida. And I'll never forget that first year going, because we got our entry in late, right? Because I kind of put a team together, and we bowled in the middle of June on the state fairgrounds in Tampa in a building that was not air conditioned. And trust me when I say, it was something. And that was also the first year of automatic scoring in the national championships. And I'm going to tell you, I remember it breaking down. I was also in a squad in Albuquerque in 2001. Couldn't have been 2002, 2003, when the power went out. And it literally we were on the 10 p.m. team squad. We finished, when we were walking out, the 7 a.m. doubles and singles were walking in.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, that happens too often.
It happens. I mean,
yeah. But anyway, so 41 opens, 33 conventions. It broke my heart looking at those convention photos because, we didn't have it this year, and there's, some unknown, that's going on with getting gatherings back together. How many state meetings have you been to?
Well, I joined the state board in 1998 and served on it until the Michigan State Board merged. And by my own choice, they wanted me to run for a spot on the state board. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I have the perfect storm going on here from my personal level. So my state commitment ended July 31st of 2018. My national commitment ended July 31st of 19. And my local, July 31st of 21. I'll be 67 years old next year. And I'm proud of it. I'm still in good health. So I've been on the state board since 98, but even prior to that, I went to 4 or 5 state meetings before that as a delegate. I still go to the state meetings, even though I'm no longer on the board. I serve on the State Hall of Fame committee. I've told them I'll serve on any committee you want, but I don't want to be tied down to having to go to meetings. I've been there, done that type thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think you just set me up for the close, and I'll give you a chance to say a few words in closing. But I just wanted to point that out. 41 Open Championships, 33 USBC conventions. It sounds like 25 plus state level leadership. And I know I sent you a note when you turned off on the board. It isn't goodbye. It's see you later. I totally, look forward to additional conversations like you will have at state and local. You're too valuable. And this is an example of that. So thanks for being here today. Anything you want to say before we send you off to the group?
Well, I appreciate you having me on today. I've loved what I've done. I still love what I do. I'm there to help people. I've had phone calls and emails from people across the country in the last 25 years because, Tony Colangelo, perfect example. Tony Colangelo was the association manager in New Jersey, local association in New Jersey in 2009 or 10, must have been 10. I get this phone call one day, and it's this guy, this Jersey accent, and he goes, "You know what? I just got this job, and I figured I got to go to the biggest and the baddest to find out what the heck to do. So I'm calling you." And that created a long time friendship with Tony and I that still continues today. But again, it all goes back to relationships, right? People that that's the great thing about this sport. I mean, yes, it's a sport. And yes, people compete at the highest level and want to be the best. But for the rest of us, and even for that level too, I don't mean that, it's about relationships and people. And that's what we've been missing in this COVID thing. In Michigan here, our bowling centers are still closed. And who knows when they're going to reopen. I mean, it's a scary thing. But we miss that contact.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
and I'm there to help. I'm always there to help. I'll tell the audience, like I told the conventions all 3 years that I ran and successfully, here's my cell phone number, 248-420-0686. Call me anytime. I'm there to help you.
Call Mark. Buddy, thanks for being here. We appreciate the time and energy that you put in. Thanks for your service to bowling for all of these years, both as the AM, but also in volunteering and all of these things. I look forward to our next conversation, but I would also say thanks for the mentorship and thanks for being the voice in the room. Thanks for being the one that was willing to look at all the angles and maybe not just one. And that's really important. So I really appreciate who you are. And again, thanks for being here. Stay safe and healthy. We'll talk to you soon.
I'll come back anytime if you want to talk more.
Absolutely, Mark.
All right. Bye, Mike. Bye, Chad.
See you, buddy. Yeah, Mike, I know it's a little different show today, but it's just so fascinating when you put people like Mark in. They've been bowling all of their lives, and then they choose to take this path, which is volunteer commitment to something that's a little bigger. I don't know how much experience you have, but what are your takeaways from the show today?
Yeah, I think, we had Mark on today, but he's one of many out there that are working hard in the state and local associations to do good for bowling, and a great ambassador and a great, I guess guest to have on today. But, it's just a tribute to show how many people work at bowling to make bowling successful and make sure that we have the rules that are supposed to be, upheld, and to make sure that when we are competing out on the lanes that it means something every time we knock down pins. So, I mean, he's a fascinating guy. I really didn't know him very well, except to see him running around Thunderbowl here and there covering events, but a real in-depth look at things. And I learned something, so I'm sure the audience did as well today.
Yeah. And if anybody out there that's interested, Mark threw his number in there, feel free to give him a call or shoot him an email. Just a wealth of knowledge, whether it be, local tournament operation, local governance, membership processing, all the way up to finance committee, budgets, legal and legislative, and equipment specs. So just amazing. Really a good friend of bowling and someone that's made bowling better over the years, like so many have. So I appreciate that perspective. What's up next for you, Mike? What's going on this next week or two?
Well, I've got a VCR in my back room here.
I wrote it down right here. Yeah.
I'm thinking about maybe seeing if I know they got wraps for like Xboxes and PlayStations. I was thinking about maybe trying to get some sort of bowling wrap for like this Panasonic VCR that I have, and get that mailing address and send that to Mark, since he spent $800 years ago so he could record bowling. So that's what we might do at Inside Bowling this week, is we might all just pass this VCR around and wrap it or paint it or something for the poor guy. $800 on a VCR. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and think about that back in the day. Your whiz bang microphone there that's so wonderful is $400 today, but back there it was $800. But we all did what we had to do, right? Mark was running a tournament or something on Saturday, so he had to tape that show so he could watch it. So that $800 was probably one of the best expenditures he could have in his lifetime, because he could experience that.
Yeah, and it might be that VCR that turned him on to be fully committed into bowling.
Yeah.
You never know. I mean, that could have been a piece of bowling history. Maybe he still got it. But yeah, as far as Inside Bowling this week, we're really circling the wagons now, trying to generate some revenue and figure out what we're going to do next in different ways. We're kind of taking a back seat from being in front of a bunch of people and doing a bunch of things that people can see, and we're working behind the scenes right now. And we've got some pretty cool projects that we're working on that hopefully we can talk about soon. And back to this microphone, I was watching The Voice finals and American Idol finals, and almost everybody uses this exact same microphone that I purchased. So I'm feeling pretty good about this microphone purchase.
Yeah, and you should. And I feel like I want to go to that length as well. But yeah, you should. It's wonderful. And I don't even know. The sound is one thing, but the look is a whole nother piece of it too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hang in there with me, because I want to. A quick announcement. This will be the last Sport of Bowling live show for quite a while, and I want to thank John Mark and Mike for being a part of it over the last few weeks. We're going to shut it down for the summer. We'll be back in the fall. There's lots of things going on. There will be several special edition shows that come your way. One with outgoing President Carl Kielick that everyone will want to pay attention to. Also one with Andrew Kane, that is purely an equipment specs committee show. Andrew is the chair of the equipment specs committee. So they'll both do sit downs with Jason Overstreet over the next 6 to 8 weeks. We'll have some upcoming special edition shows when we launch the COVID-19 protocols for the Open Championships. We'll come back and do one then, but we just won't be doing them live any in the short term. Once we get back to the fall, we'll take another look at it. The guys over on Bowl TV will continue to operate the OC show and the PWBA show and the Gauntlet and all the stuff that's going on at Bowl TV. But Mike, I want to thank you for being a part of the show over the last however many weeks we've been doing it, and we'll be back at some point in time. When you look back over the last few weeks, what stands out to you as part of these shows?
Well, I just think that it's been cool to have such a different group of people, and that you guys were doing it to educate people and not necessarily just get a bunch of people here watching, to peel back some of the layers of what happens throughout the sport of bowling while we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. I like the mix of all the different guests, and I just want to thank you and even Jason Thomas behind the scenes and everybody else that's worked on the show and that's supported the show for the opportunity to come on and have a voice and be able to ask some questions and have some fun on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to thank all of our guests that have been on the show. I look forward to the fall when we start it up again. I know we're headed towards an Open and Women's Championships opening in September. We'll do a live show from there when we open it up. Mike, I hope you'll join us for that. We might go almost as long as the ball the other night, because we'll have a group of celebrities coming through the Open Championship. But we want to thank everybody who's been on the show over the last few weeks. I've really enjoyed being a part of it. Mike, thanks for that perspective, because we are trying to educate in addition to entertain. But with that, I just again say The world's an interesting place right now. There's lots of things going on. We're going to continue to push and move bowling forward. Congratulations to the centers that have reopened. To those who haven't, hang in there. If we can help, let us know. But overall, let's just make sure we're taking care of each other over the next few months, and we'll see you soon. Stay safe and healthy, and have a great Father's Day weekend to all the fathers out there. Thank you.